People say the universe sends subtle signs, but apparently the universe also enjoys handing you a front-row ticket to your own demolition. I stood on the pavement outside the Roasted Bean, rain soaking through my Burberry trench coat, watching my husband, Preston, laugh. He wasn't laughing with me. He was laughing with a 23-year-old blonde sitting in his lap like she was waiting for a mall Santa to ask what she wanted for Christmas. It was the exact table where he proposed 12 years ago. The universe doesn't just write tragedy, it writes satire. The rain was coming down in those heavy, relentless sheets that turn the world into a gray smear, specifically designed to ruin a silk blowout. My hair was plastered to my neck, and I could feel my mascara, the expensive waterproof kind that allegedly withstands emotional events, starting to surrender. I had just come from a meeting with my corporate attorney regarding a liability waiver for my interior design firm, thinking that was going to be the most stressful part of my Tuesday. I was wrong. I was spectacularly, violently wrong. I wiped a wet hand across the glass of the cafe window, needing to be absolutely sure. Maybe it was a cousin, a really affectionate niece I'd somehow forgotten existed in the last decade? But no, the body language was unmistakable. It was proprietary. The girl, Sierra, I recognized her instantly from the company Christmas card photos, had her legs draped over his thighs. Her hands were clasped behind his neck, fingers toying with the hair at his nape, hair that I had trimmed for him just 3 days ago because his barber was booked. Preston Morrison, my husband of 12 years, the man who claimed he was at a strategy lunch with regional directors. The man who left his socks on the kitchen island and couldn't load a dishwasher to save his life, but whom I loved with a fierce, stubborn loyalty. He looked happy. Not the comfortable, quiet happy we had settled into, but that manic, dopamine-fueled happy that comes from doing something incredibly stupid. I stood there for another full minute, just letting the cold rain seep into my bones. The condensation on the window blurred their faces for a second, turning them into impressionist blobs of beige and pink, before clarity snapped back. She leaned in and whispered something. He threw his head back, exposing his throat, laughing so hard his shoulders shook. It was a performance. It was a cliché. It was the end of my life as I knew it, happening behind a pane of glass that needed Windex. Most women would have stormed in screaming. I've seen those videos. The hair pulling, the throwing of lattes, the public screeching that ends up on TikTok with 3 million views and a Karen hashtag. But as I watched Sierra's manicured finger trace the line of my husband's jaw, something inside me froze. It wasn't shock. It was a temperature drop, a sudden crystalline clarity that felt less like heartbreak and more like a tactical assessment. I didn't want to make a scene. I wanted to make a crater. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. Selt. I pushed open the heavy glass door of the Roasted Bean, and the sound of the rain was instantly replaced by the aggressively cheerful indie folk playlist they always loop. The smell of roasted coffee and damp wool hit me. I shook out my umbrella with a sharp snap, folding it methodically. My hands weren't shaking. That was the first surprise. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my hands, steady as a surgeon's. I walked toward their booth. They were in the back corner, the lover's nook near the potted fiddle leaf fig that looked like it needed watering. Neither of them looked up. They were too busy existing in their own little bubble of illicit endorphins. Sierra was giggling, that high-pitched sound that grates on your nerves like a fork on a ceramic plate. She was actually bouncing slightly on his lap, in public, in a cafe that charged $7 for an oat milk latte. I stopped about 5 feet away, pulled my iPhone 15 Pro out of my coat pocket, and raised it. I didn't say a word. I just tapped the shutter. Click. Preston's profile, mouth open, Sierra's face buried in his neck. Click. A wider angle showing the reserved sign on the table, and Preston's hand resting possessively on her thigh. Click. The money shot. Sierra pulled back, looking directly at the lens, confused, while Preston was still focused on her chest. The sound of the shutter. I forgot to turn off the fake camera noise. Finally registered. Preston's head snapped up. The color drained from his face so fast it was like someone had opened a valve in his heels. He was holding a cappuccino, and as his brain tried to process the impossible reality of his wife standing 5 feet away in a wet trench coat, his motor functions short-circuited. He inhaled the foam. "Gah-hack!" he sputtered, coughing violently, the coffee splashing over the rim of the cup and onto his khakis. Sierra, bless her heart, reacted with the grace of a startled gazelle on an ice rink. She tried to scramble off his lap, but her platform boot caught on the table leg. She flailed, her arms windmilling, and she grabbed the tablecloth for stability, nearly pulling the sugar dispenser down with her. "Whoa, easy there," I said. My voice sounded weirdly conversational, bright even. "Wouldn't want you to twist an ankle, Sierra. Those look like the new Steve Maddens." "Cute." The cafe went silent. The barista stopped grinding beans. The guy working on his screenplay at the next table lowered his laptop screen. Preston was purple now, wheezing, pounding his own chest. Lorelei, it's not what, Preston?" I stepped closer, looming over the table. "It's not a strategy lunch? Because it looks like the strategy involves a lot of hands-on collaboration." Sierra finally found her footing. She smoothed down her skirt, her face flushing a deep, blotchy crimson that clashed horribly with her pastel blouse. She looked terrifyingly young. "Mrs. Morrison, we were just reviewing the quarterly projections," I offered helpfully. "I assume that's why you were sitting on his bladder? Better viewing angle?" Preston finally found his voice. "Lacey, please, let's go outside. Let's just go to the car." He stood up, wiping coffee off his shirt with a napkin, looking everywhere but at my eyes. He looked pathetic. That was the worst part. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a middle manager who got caught shoplifting a candy bar. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere with you, sweetie," I said, smiling that tight, terrifying smile my assistant calls the kill switch. "I just came in for a dark roast, but I see you're full up." I turned to Sierra. "Tell your roommate Bianca I said hello, and that the velvet swatches she ordered are in." Sierra's jaw dropped. The blood that had rushed to her face vanished, leaving her looking waxen. She realized in that second exactly how much I knew. "Enjoy the coffee, Preston," I said, turning on my heel. "Put it on the joint card, while it still works." I made it to my car before my knees gave out. I collapsed into the driver's seat of my Audi, slamming the door against the rain, and just breathed. In, out, in, out. The smell of wet leather and my own expensive perfume filled the small space. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was starting to metabolize into pure, uncut rage. I didn't cry. I think I was too shocked to cry. Instead, I drove. I didn't go home. I couldn't look at the house, at the life we built. Not yet. I drove straight to the River Arts District, to my design studio. As I navigated the wet streets, my mind kept flashing back to 3 weeks ago. The curtain incident. Flashback, 3 weeks ago. I was in the showroom with Bianca, Sierra's best friend and roommate. We were looking at crushed velvet drapes for her apartment renovation. Bianca had been acting weird all morning, fidgety, avoiding eye contact, shredding a paper napkin. "This shade is nice," I'd said, holding up a slate gray swatch. "It blocks light well." "He's lying to you," Bianca blurted out. She looked like she was going to vomit. I can't look at you and not say it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I had lowered the swatch slowly. "Who is lying to me, Bianca?" "Preston. And Sierra. They take lunch breaks together, but they don't eat lunch. And that conference in Charlotte last month? He wasn't there. They were at an Airbnb in the mountains. I saw the receipts on her phone. She thinks it's true love. She thinks he's leaving you." The world had tilted on its axis right then, but I hadn't screamed. I had thanked her, finished the consultation, and then gone to my car and vomited. End flashback. I pulled into my parking spot, marked L. Morrison Designs, and killed the engine. I had spent the last 3 weeks praying Bianca was wrong or exaggerating, or that it was a one-time thing. I had hired a PI, but I hadn't needed him. I just needed a rainy Tuesday and a gut feeling. I unlocked my studio, the heavy industrial door swinging open to reveal the sanctuary I had built from scratch. Samples of granite, mood boards, architectural blueprints. This was mine. Preston had nothing to do with this. I locked the door behind me, engaging the deadbolt. I threw my wet coat on the drafting table. It was time to go to work, but I wasn't designing a kitchen today. I was designing a demolition. I sat at my desk, the large monitors humming in front of me, and pulled out my phone. The photos. They were honestly excellent quality. The lighting in the roasted bean was surprisingly flattering for a scene of moral bankruptcy. I opened the contact list. I found the group chat named Morrison Family Updates. It was mostly used by Lucinda, Preston's mother, to send passive-aggressive articles about fertility treatments or career women who regret it all at 40. The members were me, Preston, Lucinda, and Brooks, Preston's boss at Sterling Marketing, who also happened to be my second cousin. Brooks and I had grown up together. We shared a childhood of scraped knees and summers at the lake. He was family first, Preston's boss second. I knew exactly where his loyalties lay. My thumb hovered over the Attach Media button. Don't think, just do. I selected the 3 photos. Caption, oops, wrong chat. But since we're sharing family updates, here's Preston working late at the roasted bean today, with his assistant. Send. I placed the phone on the desk and watched. 12:14 p.m. sent. 12:15 p.m. read by Lucinda. 12:15 p.m. read by Brooks. 3 little dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then appeared again. My phone rang. It was Lucinda. I declined the call. Then a text from Lucinda. Lacey, this is incredibly distasteful. Hacking his phone or following him? You look desperate. I laughed out loud, a harsh barking sound in the empty studio. Of course. It wasn't Preston's fault for cheating. It was my fault for seeing it. Then a text from Brooks. Brooks, is this real? Me, taken 20 minutes ago. He's with Sierra Grant. Brooks, I'm in a meeting with HR. Give me an hour. The satisfaction was cold, like swallowing an ice cube whole. Lucinda could pray it away, but Brooks ran a tight ship. And Sterling Marketing had a very strict policy regarding manager-subordinate relationships. I knew this because I had helped Preston proofread the employee handbook 3 years ago. Step 2 required a printer and a trip to the post office. I knew about Hunter, Sierra's fiancé. He was an accountant, a nice guy from what Bianca had told me. He was currently planning a wedding that was 6 weeks away. Sierra had been posting countdowns on her Instagram stories. 42 days until forever. Soulmates. I walked over to my high-end laser printer, the one I used for client presentations. I loaded the glossy cardstock. I selected the clearest photo, the one where Sierra was looking at the camera with that deer-in-headlights expression while sitting on my husband. Print. The machine whirred, spitting out the high-resolution evidence of betrayal. I went to my supply closet. I found a heavy cream-colored envelope left over from a wedding invitation suite I had designed for a client last year. I grabbed a spool of navy satin ribbon. I slid the photo into the envelope. I pulled a piece of stiff stationery and wrote, in my best architectural block lettering, Hunter. You should know how your fiancée spends her lunch breaks. Better to know now than after the deposit checks clear. Wishing you clarity, a concerned stranger. I sealed it. I tied the ribbon around it in a perfect bow. It looked like a gift. It looked like a wedding present. I grabbed my umbrella and walked 3 blocks to the blue mailbox on the corner. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. I held the envelope over the slot. I hesitated for exactly 1 second. Was this too mean? Was I destroying an innocent man's life? No, I was saving him. If someone had sent me this photo 12 years ago, I would have thanked them. I dropped the envelope in. Clang, it was done. The missile was in the air. I spent the next 48 hours in a fugue state of work and waiting. I didn't go home. I slept on the leather sofa in my office. I ignored Preston's 47 missed calls. I ignored the texts that ranged from begging, "Lacey, please talk to me," to angry, "You're reacting like a crazy person." Thursday afternoon, the bomb detonated. First, a text from Brooks. "Brooks, it's done. He's terminated. Effective immediately. HR didn't even hesitate. Security escorted him out. You okay?" I replied with a single emoji. Then the social media fallout began. I had created a burner Instagram account, DesignLover88, specifically to monitor this. I went to Hunter's profile. He had posted a black screen on his story. Text: "When people show you who they are, believe them. Wedding is off. Please respect my privacy." I switched to Sierra's profile. It was gone. User not found. She had deactivated. I checked the local Asheville gossip pages and the tagged photos for the roasted bean. Someone had posted a vague status. "Drama at the coffee shop Tuesday. Let's just say someone's engagement is over. Asheville tea." The grapevine was moving at the speed of light. My phone buzzed with a text from Bianca. "Bianca, OMG. Sierra is at our apartment crying hysterically. She says Hunter kicked her out. She's moving back to her parents in Charlotte." Preston got fired? Me. Actions have consequences, B. I set my phone down. I felt light. Hollow, but light. The structure of their affair had been built on secrecy. I had simply removed the load-bearing wall of silence, and the whole thing had collapsed in 2 days. The silence that followed was heavy. The adrenaline of the attack phase was fading, leaving me with the stark reality of the cleanup phase. I called Georgina Ramsey. She was the most terrifying divorce attorney in North Carolina. Her nickname was the Velociraptor. I had scheduled the consultation the morning after the Café incident. "I want everything, Georgina," I told her over the phone. "The house is mine, inherited from Grandma. I want 60% of the joint assets. I want his retirement. I want him to hurt financially the way he hurt me emotionally." "We can do that," Georgina purred. "North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, but misconduct counts. We'll file today." Once the paperwork was filed, I threw myself into the only thing that made sense: the Grand Hotel proposal. It was a massive contract, a complete restoration of a 1920s Art Deco hotel downtown. It was the kind of job that could define a career. I needed this. Not just for the money, though I would need that too now that I was single, but for the validation. I spent my nights in the studio, surrounded by velvet swatches, brass fixture catalogs, and vintage lighting diagrams. I poured all my grief into the design. The lobby would be emerald and gold. The suites would be sanctuaries. I was building a world where everything was perfect, where lines were straight and foundations were solid, unlike my marriage. Preston had stopped calling. He had moved into a shitty extended-stay motel near the airport. I knew this because I tracked the joint credit card before I froze it. Motel 6, $59.99 night. Good. He called exactly 1 week after the firing. 7 days of radio silence, and then my phone lit up with his face. A photo from our trip to Charleston, smiling, tan, happy. It felt like looking at a ghost. I let it ring 4 times. Let him sweat. Then I picked up. "This is Lorelei." "Lacey." His voice cracked. He sounded wrecked. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I put the phone on speaker and went back to arranging fabric samples. I thought my filing served as a pretty comprehensive conversation starter. "That's not fair," he whined. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Explain what, Preston? Explain the physics of how your assistant ended up in your lap? I'm not a scientist, but I understand gravity. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. A mistake is forgetting to take the trash out. A mistake is buying the wrong milk. 2 months of sneaking around, lying to my face, and booking Airbnbs in the mountains isn't a mistake, Preston. It's a hobby. Silence. I could hear him breathing raggedly. I lost my job because of you, he said finally. The venom was seeping in now. The victim card. No, I corrected him sharply. You lost your job because you violated your contract and company policy by sleeping with a subordinate. I just turned on the lights. If the room was dirty, that's on you. My mother won't talk to me, he mumbled. Good for Lucinda. She finally found a moral compass. Tell her I said thanks for the casserole offer, by the way. This isn't the woman I married, he spat. You're right. The woman you married was a doormat who thought you hung the moon. This woman? She's the one who's going to take the house, the dog, and the 401k. Goodbye, Preston. I hung up. My hand was shaking again, but this time it felt less like fear and more like power. I was at the Daily Grind, a different coffee shop, obviously, trying to focus on the lighting schematics for the Grand Hotel ballroom. I felt a shadow fall over my table. I looked up, expecting Preston, bracing for a fight. Instead, it was Marcus Thorne. Marcus was my direct competitor. He ran a sleek, modern design firm across town. We had been rivals for years, fighting over the same high-end clients. He was arrogant, expensive, and talented. I assumed he was here to gloat about my personal life imploding. Lorelei, he nodded, clutching a black coffee. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. Marcus, I replied, keeping my guard up. If you're here to ask about the Grand Hotel bid, I haven't submitted it yet. And yes, I'm going to win. He pulled out a chair and sat down without asking. I'm not here about the hotel. I heard about Preston. News travels fast. It does. Listen, I don't like you, he said bluntly. Feeling is mutual. But I really, really hate cheaters, Marcus said, his expression darkening. My ex-wife cleaned me out 3 years ago. Same story, assistant, cliché. I blinked. I didn't know that. I played golf with Preston a few times last summer, Marcus continued, lowering his voice. He's an idiot and a braggart. He got drunk on the back nine one day and wouldn't shut up about how smart he was with his money. Preston isn't smart with money, I scoffed. He buys crypto based on Reddit threads. He told me he was moving commission bonuses into a separate account. A freedom fund, he called it. Said he didn't want you nagging him about spending. My spine stiffened. What account? Marcus slid a napkin across the table. He had written a bank name on it. First Citizens, Casey Branch. He mentioned he opened it in South Carolina so statements wouldn't come to the house. If you're going after assets, subpoena that bank. I stared at the napkin. This was huge. This was hidden assets. This was fraud. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. Because I want to beat you for the Grand Hotel contract fair and square. Not because you were distracted by a messy divorce. Crush him, Lorelei. He walked away before I could say thank you. 2 days later, Preston decided that a phone call wasn't enough. I was in the middle of a team meeting with Tessa, my assistant, and our 2 junior designers. We were debating velvet versus linen for the hotel lobby seating. The front door of the studio slammed open. Preston marched in. He looked decomposed. That was the only word for it. He was wearing the same wrinkled button-down shirt he'd had on during the FaceTime call. His hair was greasy. He had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. He reeked of stale beer and desperation. "We need to talk about the house," he announced, his voice booming in the quiet studio. Tessa jumped up. She was 22, tiny and fierce. "Sir, you can't be back here. This is a private business." Preston ignored her, pushing past the reception desk. He marched right up to my drafting table. "You changed the locks, Lorelei. I couldn't get in to get my clubs." "I changed the locks because I filed for divorce and requested exclusive use of the marital residence," I said calmly, not looking up from my laptop. "My attorney sent you the email." "That house is half mine," he shouted. Spittle flew from his mouth. "We've been married 12 years. I put up the shelves in the garage. I painted the deck. You painted the deck and got more paint on the grass than the wood, I reminded him. And the house was left to me by my grandmother. My name is on the deed. Only my name. Inherited property is separate property in North Carolina, Preston. You own exactly 0% of that brick and mortar. I'm not leaving without a check, he threatened, leaning over my desk. Half of everything we built. Everything we built? I finally stood up. I was wearing 4-inch heels, which put me eye to level with him. Preston, you built a reputation for mediocrity and a pile of credit card debt. I built a business. I built the equity. I built the life you just torpedoed because you wanted to play doctor with an intern. Don't talk about her like that, he snapped. I'll talk about her however I want. She's unemployed, single, and living with her parents. You destroyed her life too. Good job, hero. Preston looked around the studio. He saw the mood boards, the staff watching him with open disgust. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that he held no power here. You're a cold bitch, you know that, he sneered. I'm a professional, Preston. There's a difference. Now get out before Tessa calls the police. She's been dying to use the panic button. Tessa held up her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen, grinning like a shark. Preston turned purple. He kicked a wastebasket on his way out, sending paper scraps flying. "This isn't over," he yelled as the door slammed behind him. "Actually," I said to the silent room, smoothing my skirt, "I think it is." "Okay," Tessa said, picking up the wastebasket. That was cinematic. "Can we get back to the linen swatches?" The door hadn't even stopped vibrating from Preston's exit before the adrenaline dump hit me. It felt like someone had cut the strings on a marionette. I sank into my Herman Miller chair, the leather squeaking in the dead silence of the studio. My hands, which had been perfectly steady while I was eviscerating my husband, were now trembling so hard I couldn't pick up my pen. "Okay," Tessa said, her voice unusually soft. She walked over and placed a sweating cup of cold brew on my desk. That was intense. "Do you want me to cancel the 2 p.m. with the Highland Group reps? I can tell them you have a structural emergency." I looked at the clock. 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes. "No," I said, forcing my spine to straighten. "If I cancel, I'm just a woman going through a messy divorce. If I take the meeting and crush it, I'm a professional who happens to be shedding some dead weight. There's a difference." "You're terrifying," Tessa said, but she meant it as a compliment. "I'll clean up the trash can," he kicked. I spent the next 10 minutes in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyeliner was intact. "This is the separation," I told my reflection. "There is Lorelei the wife, who is currently screaming into a void, and there is Lorelei the designer, who is about to pitch a 6-figure renovation. Lorelei the wife had to stay in the bathroom." At 2 p.m. sharp, the reps from the Grand Hotel Group walked in. Diane and Robert. They looked like money. Old money. Beige cashmere, understated watches, the kind of posture you only get from boarding school. "Lorelei." Diane smiled, extending a hand. "We've heard wonderful things." "Diane, Robert, welcome." I shook their hands firmly. "Let's talk about Art Deco restoration." For the next hour, I wasn't a victim. I was a machine. I walked them through the mood boards, explaining how we would preserve the original 1920s molding while integrating smart room technology. I spoke about velvet textures and brass inlays. I didn't stumble. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about Preston sleeping in a Motel 6. When they left, Diane paused at the door. "We're meeting with 2 other firms, including Marcus Thorne's. But I have to say, your vision has a certain emotional resonance the others lacked." "Passion," I lied smoothly. "I believe spaces should tell a story." "We'll be in touch." As soon as the door clicked shut, I put my head on my desk and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs for 12 years. Georgina Ramsey's office smelled exactly like I expected: mahogany, leather, and the distinct metallic scent of total victory. She was 58, wearing a Chanel suit that cost more than my first car, and she looked at me like I was a particularly interesting weapon she couldn't wait to fire. "So," she said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the manila folder I'd slid across the table, "you have the photos. You have the termination letter from his employer. You have the texts regarding the business trip to Charlotte. And I have a lead on hidden assets," I added. I told her about Marcus Thorne's tip, the secret account at First Citizens in South Carolina, the Freedom Fund. Georgina's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Usually men like Preston aren't smart enough to hide money. They just spend it. But if he moved marital assets into a separate account without your knowledge, that's fraud. We'll subpoena the bank records immediately. "I want to bury him, Georgina," I said. It sounded harsh, even to my own ears, but I couldn't take it back. He came to my office. He tried to intimidate me. He thinks because he's sorry now that the consequences should stop. "He's mourning the loss of his lifestyle, not the loss of his wife," Georgina said, opening her laptop. "It's a common pathology. Don't worry. By the time we're done, the only thing he'll own is his regret." She started typing. "The deposition is set for next Thursday. I'm going to make him uncomfortable. I want you to sit there and say absolutely nothing. Can you do that?" "I've been practicing for 12 years, I said. His mother trained me well. 3 days before the deposition, the universe decided to remind me that revenge is rarely a straight line. I was at the studio finalizing the lighting specs for a kitchen remodel when Georgina called. Her voice wasn't its usual purr. It was sharp, clipped. "We have a problem," she said. "What kind of problem?" "The subpoena for the First Citizens account came back. The account exists, Lorelei, but it's empty." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean empty?" "I mean balance, zero. Transaction history shows a cash withdrawal of $42,000 3 days before you filed for divorce. He pulled it all out. Cash. It's untraceable." "He knew," I whispered. "How did he know?" "He probably just panicked when he got caught at the cafe. He grabbed what he could. We can argue dissipation of assets in court, but without the cash itself, he can claim he spent it on gambling or lost it or burned it. It makes it much harder to force him to pay it back if the money is physically gone. We just lost our biggest financial leverage." I hung up, feeling sick. That $42,000 was my leverage. It was the proof of his premeditated betrayal. Without it, it was just his word against mine on finances. I sat there, staring at the rain hitting the studio window, feeling the advantage slip away. I needed something else, something undeniable. My phone buzzed. It was Bianca. "Bianca, can you talk? It's urgent." I called her back immediately. "Bianca, now isn't a great time. I just got some bad legal news." "Shut up and listen," Bianca hissed. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. "Sierra took a pregnancy test." The world stopped. The rain stopped. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. "What?" "She's pregnant, Lorelei. She's about 8 weeks along. She told me last night she's keeping it, and she's terrified because, well, the math." "The math," I repeated, my brain doing somersaults. "She was sleeping with Preston and Hunter during the same week in February. She doesn't know whose it is." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a general who just realized the enemy left the gate open. "Does Preston know?" I asked. "No, she hasn't told anyone but me." "Bianca," I said, grabbing a pen, "you are a magnificent human being. Don't tell her I know, just let nature take its course." I called Georgina back. "Forget the money," I said. "I found something better." The deposition room was sterile. Gray carpet, gray walls, a long mahogany table that reflected the fluorescent lights. The air conditioner was humming too loudly, or maybe that was just the blood rushing in my ears. Preston sat across from me. He looked worse than he had at the office. He'd lost weight, and his suit, the navy one I bought him for our 10th anniversary, hung loosely on his frame. He had a new lawyer, a guy who looked like he chased ambulances for a living and probably had a billboard on the highway. Georgina sat next to me, organizing her papers with terrifying precision. "This is a discovery deposition," Georgina began, her voice smooth as silk. "Mr. Morrison, you are under oath. Do you understand?" "Yes," Preston mumbled. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Let's start with finances," Georgina said. "Mr. Morrison, can you explain this charge on the Joint American Express from February 14th? The Asheville Grand Hotel. Room service for 2. Champagne. Strawberries." Preston shifted in his seat. I was entertaining a client." "On Valentine's Day?" Georgina raised an eyebrow. "Which client?" Preston glanced at his lawyer, who shrugged. "It was a potential lead." "A potential lead named Sierra Grant?" Georgina asked. "No, I mean—" "She was there, but it was work." "Work," Georgina repeated. She pulled out a stack of paper. "We have text messages recovered from your company phone, Mr. Morrison. February 14th, 11:30 p.m. Sent to Sierra Grant. Best night of my life. You're magic." "Is that standard corporate feedback at Sterling Marketing?" Preston turned the color of old oatmeal. We developed a personal relationship." "A personal relationship," Georgina said, tasting the words. "And did this personal relationship involve the use of marital funds to purchase jewelry? Specifically, a Tiffany bracelet charged on March 2nd? I intended to pay it back." "With what funds? The $42,000 you withdrew from your secret account at First Citizens?" Preston's head snapped up. Panic flared in his eyes. He didn't know we knew about the cash. That was for living expenses." "You spent $42,000 on living expenses in 3 weeks?" Georgina asked. "That's a lot of Motel 6, Mr. Morrison." We went back and forth for an hour. Preston was sweating through his shirt. His lawyer looked bored, checking his watch every 5 minutes. Then Georgina glanced at me. I gave the tiny nod. It was time for the nuke. "Mr. Morrison," Georgina said, shifting her tone from aggressive to confusingly gentle. "Are you aware of the current status of Miss Grant's health?" Preston blinked, confused by the pivot. "Her health? We haven't spoken much since the firing. She's ignoring my texts." "So you are not aware that Miss Grant visited an OB/GYN clinic in Charlotte 4 days ago?" The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the vending machine down the hall. "What?" Preston whispered. "Miss Grant is pregnant, Mr. Morrison." Georgina dropped the bomb. "Approximately 8 weeks, which aligns perfectly with the timeline of your strategy sessions." Preston's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. He looked like a fish that had been slapped onto a dock. "Pregnant? However," Georgina continued, relentless, "we have reason to believe there is a paternity dispute. Miss Grant was still cohabitating with her fiancé, Mr. Caldwell, at the time. The odds are, let's say, a coin toss." Preston looked at his lawyer. "Did you know this?" His lawyer looked just as shocked. "I have no knowledge of this." Preston looked at me then. Really looked at me. For the first time in months, I saw the arrogance completely evaporate. He looked terrified. He looked like a man realizing that his fun little fling just became an 18-year financial liability. "Is it mine?" he croaked. I broke my silence. I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the table. "That's the fun part, Preston. You get to wait and see, just like I waited for you to come home for dinner all those nights." "We're done here." His lawyer stood up, gathering his papers frantically. "We need a recess." "By all means," Georgina smiled. "Take your time." Georgina walked me to my car. We were in the underground garage, the concrete echoing with the sound of our heels. "That was," Georgina paused, searching for the word art, the look on his face when you mentioned the paternity, priceless. "We have him, Lorelei. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him just to make this stop. The cash withdrawal won't matter. The judge will be so disgusted by the pregnancy and the affair that she'll award you the majority share just on principle. You're a genius, Georgina. I know. I'll draft the settlement offer tomorrow. Go have a drink. I got into my Audi. I sat there for a moment, the silence of the car wrapping around me. I didn't feel happy exactly. I felt clean, like I had just scrubbed a very stubborn stain out of a rug. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Lorelei speaking. Lorelei? This is Diane from Highland Hotel Group. My heart jumped into my throat. Hi, Diane. We've made a decision regarding the restoration project, she said. Her voice was warm. We want you. Your proposal was the only one that felt real. When can you start? I can start Monday, I said, my voice steady, even though I was grinning like a maniac. Perfect. We'll send the contract over. I hung up. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I had lost a husband. I had gained a multi-million-dollar contract. I started the car. The engine purred. Fair trade, I said out loud. That night, I met Morin, my college roommate, ride or die, at The View, a rooftop bar overlooking the city. I ordered the most expensive Pinot Noir on the menu. So, Marin said, eyes wide over her wine glass. Pregnant? Seriously? Seriously, Bianca confirmed it. And Preston didn't know? He looked like he was going to vomit on the deposition table. It was glorious. Marin shook her head. You know, usually when people say, revenge is sweet, they're lying. It's usually bitter. But this sounds like dark chocolate. Bitter, but expensive. I don't even feel like it's revenge anymore, I admitted, looking out at the city lights. Revenge implies I'm doing it to hurt him. I'm just correcting the ledger. He took 12 years of my loyalty and set it on fire. I'm just making sure I don't burn with it. You're flourishing, Marin said. Look at you. You got the hotel contract. You look 10 years younger. You're scary, but in a good way. I feel free, I said, and I meant it. I feel like I've been holding my breath since I was 22, trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, and now I can just be Lorelei. We clinked glasses. To Lorelei, Marin said, may she never shrink herself for a man again. 2 weeks before the final court date, Lucinda called. I almost didn't answer. I expected more guilt trips, more Bible verses about forgiveness. Hello, Lucinda. Lacey, she said. Her voice sounded thin, old. I heard about the baby. Word travels fast in the South. It's a possibility, I said neutrally. Preston he's in a bad way, Lacey. He's living in that awful motel. He says you're taking everything. I'm taking what's mine, Lucinda. I know, she sighed. A long, rattling sigh. I know. I called to say, I'm sorry. I froze. Lucinda Morrison did not apologize. She criticized. She suggested. She prayed. She did not apologize. Excuse me? I was hard on you, she said. For years. I wanted you to be more like me, a housewife, a mother. I thought your career was vanity. But seeing Preston now, seeing how weak he is, and seeing how strong you are, I raised a foolish son, Lacey, and I treated a smart woman like a fool. I was wrong. My throat got tight. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was validation. Thank you, Lucinda. That means a lot. He doesn't deserve you, she added. He never did. If that baby is his, God help that child. He's not ready. No, I said, he's not. The final hearing was anticlimactic in the way that real tragedy often is. There was no screaming, no gavel banging like on TV, just a quiet room with Judge Hampton, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. Preston was there. He looked defeated. He signed the papers without reading them. Judge Hampton reviewed the file. She looked at the photos. which were part of the evidence for misconduct. She looked at the financial records. "Mr. Morrison," the judge said, peering over her glasses, "you admit to the adultery?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And the withdrawal of funds?" "Yes, Your Honor." "This court finds the conduct egregious," Judge Hampton said. "Mrs. Morrison is awarded the marital residence in full as separate property. The remaining marital assets will be divided 65-35 in favor of Mrs. Morrison to account for the dissipated funds and legal fees. Mr. Morrison is responsible for all court costs." Preston slumped. 65-35. He was leaving the marriage with a used car, his clothes, and about enough money to rent an apartment for 3 months. "You are divorced," the judge said. "Good luck to you both. Though, Mr. Morrison, I suspect you'll need it more." We walked out. Preston stopped me in the hallway. "Lacey," he said. He looked like he wanted to touch my arm, but thought better of it. I hope you're happy." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had shared a bed with for a decade. He was just a stranger now. A stranger who owed me money. "I am," I said. "Goodbye, Preston." I walked away. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, Bianca called me while I was on site at the hotel, wearing a hard hat and holding a blueprint. "The results are in," she said. I stepped into a quiet hallway. "And?" "It's Preston's." I let out a low whistle. "Of course it is. The universe loves a punchline." "Hunter is out," Bianca said. "He's gone, moved to Atlanta. Sierra is, well, she's stuck. Her parents are furious, but they're helping her. She's going to keep it. But she knows Preston is broke. She knows about the 65-35 split. She knows she bet on a losing horse." "And Preston?" "He's crying in parking lots, mostly. He's got a kid on the way, no career, and child support payments he can't afford. He's looking for jobs in retail." I hung up. I looked out the window at the city of Asheville. Preston was going to be a father. He was going to be tied to Sierra forever. That was his punishment. It wasn't prison, it wasn't bankruptcy. It was a life of mediocrity and obligation, anchored to a mistake he made in a coffee shop. I went back to the construction crew. "All right," I yelled over the sound of a saw. "Let's take down this wall. I want more light in here." It's been 3 months since the gavel came down. The Grand Hotel opened last weekend. The gala was the event of the season. I wore a crimson dress that hugged every curve. Revenge body is a real thing, by the way. And I stood on the stage as the mayor cut the ribbon. My business has tripled. I had to hire 2 new designers just to handle the workflow. I bought a new car, a white Range Rover, the exact car Preston always said was too impractical. It drives like a dream. I haven't spoken to Preston. I heard through the grapevine, Bianca, that he's working at a sporting goods store in the mall, selling running shoes. He sends Sierra $400 a month, which is all the court could garnish from his minimum wage. Sierra had a baby girl. They named her Destiny, which honestly feels like a joke I'm not cruel enough to make. Last night I was sitting on my back porch. It was raining. A soft summer rain, not the storm from that day in March. I was drinking wine from a glass that cost $50 in a house that is 100% mine, looking at a garden I planted myself. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I had deleted but recognized. Preston. "Saw the article in the paper about the hotel? You look beautiful. I miss you." I stared at the screen for a solid minute. I thought about typing back. I thought about telling him off one last time. I thought about telling him he's a father and he should focus on that. But then I realized he doesn't get my words anymore. He doesn't get my anger. He doesn't get my energy. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number. Then I put my phone down, closed my eyes, and listened to the rain. It didn't sound like tragedy anymore. It sounded like everything being washed clean. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.